All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pre-Sales Unplugged with the Leadership Playbook. I'm Arvi, the founder of Elite Talent. I work with SaaS companies to help hire top tier pre-sales and post-sales talent, but today is not about me. This show is all about the leaders that are building the go-to-market teams and the strategies that actually work in today's market. If this is your first time joining us, thank you. Welcome in. One quick note before we jump in. These conversations are always live and intentionally unedited. So, whatever you hear here is real and exactly how it happened. We stream them live, but obviously, you can also catch the replay on our podcast across all major platforms, anywhere from Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever it is that you listen. If you get value from our conversation, I always ask that you at least make sure to follow, subscribe, or leave a review. I personally read every single one of them. But with that being said, today I'm super excited to have Scott Joworski. I got that right. I needed a second. He's the director of sales engineering for Dashlane, and I'm so excited to have you here. Obviously, thank you for joining and just being willing to share your knowledge and, of course, a little bit about your journey as well. You have a really strong record in this space, so I'm super excited to kind of dive in and, as they like to say, pick your brain. But welcome. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, and Scott, obviously, with that being said, I'd love to just kick off with a little bit of your story. How did you end up in pre-sales overall? How did you even find out about pre-sales to begin with? Always like to
Yeah,
ask that.
um, I started my career in post-sales consulting, so doing Microsoft consulting back in the day when email servers were on-prem. I helped companies
Mhm.
migrate from 2007 version to 2010, and that was quite a cash cow for companies. And pre-sales was my golden goose a little bit
Yeah.
uh, because the pre-sales guys, as you grow in your consulting career, you get pulled into pre-sales conversations, and I always found those so interesting and engaging. The pre-sales guys got to talk about the strategic play of why a company might do a project. They got to set up the project, usually create a little bit of a project plan, and they handed that off to someone like me at the time who had to go to the customer, manage the project, do all the clicks. And after a number of years of that, that gets kind of repetitive. And pre-sales just seemed like a better path. There's a lot of money to be had in the pre-sales
Yeah.
space, and you're closer to revenue. You're talking to customers about their real challenges, and you don't have to go on site and kind of do the same project over and over. You're really like helping customers solve challenges. So I charted a path early in my career to do it, and took a few detours, but I'm here now and had a great opportunity at my current company, Dashlane, to be the first SE, and I'm very happy that ended up the way it did.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And I'd love to talk a little bit about your career progression because I think that obviously pre-sales is a great career, but there's also so many different ways you can go about it, right? I'd love to know what was your career progression within pre-sales. I know you said you took a couple detours, and then obviously, how did you end up in a director level?
Yeah, when I moved to New York in 2016, I was doing Microsoft pre-sales, which is what I wanted to do. This other company called me, and there's had an opportunity doing automation and AI in its infancy that I couldn't pass up. So I did director level IT automation for about 2 years at a
Yeah.
company called Amelia. Um, and then Dashlane called me and said, "We just closed our Series C. We're looking for our first sales engineer." And I jumped at it.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a lateral move for me in my career, but being a first sales engineer in a startup that just closed a big round of funding, like there's just only an upside to that. Um,
Yeah.
and I really treated myself as a one-man department. So I was an individual contributor, but like had to manage how an SE organization would work at this company. And with that came promotions. And I got to influence the organization with my experience in pre-sales, even in IT, post-sales consulting, and ultimately, you know, continue to move up. So that was
Yeah.
to manager. I, eventually had to hire a team. It just made sense. And then
Yeah.
director, like you have to really make an impact to get director. I would say at most companies, that's quite a high bar. And there were some strategic projects going on at Dashlane that were stalling a bit. We're getting the traction that they uh, wanted to, and had a lot of funding behind it. And I, was in the project teams discussions, talked about how we could improve things, and offered to like take over some of these strategic projects. And after some back and forth and discussions with executives, got a green light, and they ended up handing me over some big initiatives at the company. And with that came a promotion. So I owned multiple teams for a time at my company. And it's really just like looking for opportunities, seeing where you can help, seeing where you can make an impact, and working with the people around you to maximize your impact within the company. It's really easy to show up as an SE and go on your calls, do the kind of day to day, and go
Yeah.
home. You can be very successful doing that, and companies do need those people that just
Very
want to do
true.
that. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you want to move up, you really have to kind of put in the effort and think strategically about your role, about the business, and how you can make an impact.
Yeah, that is very true. I agree a lot with what you said. And I also think that, sometimes there might be like a little bit of a stigma for somebody that stays in an IC role either for too long, or maybe they don't even want to go to a management position or a leadership position. I'd love to know, what was maybe you had like a big aha moment transitioning from an IC to like either your first management position or your first leadership position. What was like a shift that was like, okay, I can do that in IC, but not necessarily in the management, or maybe personality changes that you had to work on yourself to get better at?
Yeah. Managing is different, but I had a lot of management experience coming in, so it wasn't much of a culture shift. But I will say that, for those out there that might want to move up, first and foremost, being a great SE is like a baseline. Your AEs have to love you, the salespeople, the
Mhm.
customer success people, whomever you're working with, have to really look up to you as a trusted advisor in your space. Um, the customers obviously have to have good feedback, or at least not negative feedback about experiences with you. Um, and that's the baseline. And then beyond that, proactively adding value to the team. So where I see SCs stagnant in their careers are really not doing anything between their calls, between those customer interactions. And the SCs who excel are the ones utilizing that time in between to like make things better, um, make the people around them better, make our
Yeah.
offering better, that kind of thing. So um, also, like the shift into management, usually you start with one, maybe two people, especially if you're growing with a company. It's not,
Yeah.
you just feel like you have someone on your team that you can kind of hand work off to. I think that's probably the biggest adjustment of like giving
Yeah.
someone else work and like feeling okay about that. It's like, they're getting paid. It's okay to ask your employees to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. No, I actually love that you mentioned that, because it's something that's not talked about enough in the management position or even leadership. Of course, you have to learn how to delegate, and sometimes being an IC, that might not necessarily come too natural, right? And then you might catch yourself doing things that other times, your team member can do for you, or it's technically part of their responsibility now, and you might want to push them to grow into the next level, etc. Did that come naturally to you, the delegation part, or just like the management part? And I know you said like, you have to remind yourself to give them the task as well and not feel bad about it. Or I guess, what was your shift in that?
I still struggle with this as a manager because two things. One is sometimes I want it done my way, and I think every manager or director
Yeah.
has that of like, I can delegate this, but I'm gonna probably have to do a similar amount of work. But you need your employees to grow and to be able to take on that work. So it's really important that you kind of get over it and
Yeah.
good work, even though it might come back with something less than what you desired. Um, the other thing is necessity. Like if you're trying to do everything, um, you're just not going to be an effective leader. And
Yeah.
those are the two things that I remind myself when I am going to take over a project or thinking about taking over a project. One, I want my team to be able to experience more and grow more. And a lot of times, SEs who want to grow their careers are asking for interesting projects to work on. So, like those I let them jump at. It's like, here's something that came on my plate. I think this is a good opportunity for you. And then two, really thinking about how your time, if you're doing individual contributor tasks or something that your team could be doing, it's taking away from things that you could be doing. And like in the moment, it's not always clear what that you're taking away from, but 2 weeks later on the other side, it's like, wow, I didn't do these other things because I did something 10% better than what one of my senior SEs could have done.
Yeah, that is very true. And I'll speak honestly, even from personal experience in my own business, I know that there's times where I'm like, should I delegate this? I know I'm going to get it done right if I do it the first time. Or should I spend double the amount of time but also teach somebody else? In an unfortunate but fortunate way, it's like sometimes you have to spend that extra time, let people in a way fail or do it their way. And then, sometimes I also honestly even get surprised. I'm like, wow, I never thought of getting it done that way, but it led to the same result. So that's definitely the beauty of leadership and being in a management position. If somebody, I know we talked a little bit about this, that you have to show yourself and skill set, not just kind of like do your job and then clock out for the day and expect all these types of promotions. By the way, actually, are you guys fully remote at Dashlane or also in office hybrid? How does that set up?
Yeah, we're hybrid. We have some remote employees that have been grandfathered into our
Yeah,
policy.
nice.
We're 3 days
Okay.
on site.
Because my next question kind of leads to that. If somebody wants to follow a similar path to yours, right? Like start either super early in a company or at least get that experience within sales engineering. Do you have any actual tips or concrete steps that they can take early in their SE career to really help them get to the level that you're at right now?
Yeah, I think, well, kind of even before an SE, I feel like the challenge of breaking into an SE role is high.
Hmm.
And the best path I found is people who are in a company that has SE roles and just start doing work to move towards that, make it known across the company that that's their goal. And that can
Yeah.
really help. Um, for myself, like I jumped up the opportunity and there's a little bit of luck involved. I hate to say it, but you have to find the
There's
right.
always a little bit of sprinkled, luck in there.
Like, as a first SE, I knew the company was growing. They just closed
Yeah.
$20 million of a Series C, right? Like, there's gonna be growth there. Um, but SE's, the turnover is pretty average. I would say SE's tenure is maybe 2 years at companies, and managers maybe 3 to 4. So there's
Mhm.
turnovers, and making sure you're in the right place at the right time and, are viewed as that team lead, and not only that someone your manager knows, but his manager or the managers around. So when that opportunity does open up, like you're at least in the running, if not a clear choice.
Yeah.
You really always got to be thinking about how am I perceived within the organization, what impact am I making, and am I ready for a manager role? And have those really candid conversations with your manager, even if that's your manager has your current job. Like, okay, maybe it's not this organization, but you know, keep building a path towards that. If
Yeah.
you're not having those conversations and not thinking about it, month to month, quarter to quarter, the role comes up, and then you're scrambling and you're trying to like build all this relationship and goodwill in the span of 2 weeks when you should really be doing that all along.
All along. Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And I will say, based on what you mentioned earlier, at least from what I've noticed too, and feel free to correct me, or at least what your experience has been with your team, but it's definitely become tougher to break into sales engineering now than maybe was before. It was, I will say, maybe 5 or so years ago, there was definitely plenty of, sales engineering, but I think in the last 5 years, the role has really kind of exploded in its name and the responsibilities and things that you can do within it and the career growth and the money you can make. So it's become a lot more like sexy to people and people have jumped more in. So I do think that now is a lot harder than it was, maybe 5 years ago. And you do have to do a little bit more extra now than you maybe would do 5 years ago. So, like you said, I agree. I think that starting with a company that, especially if you've never had customer facing experience in the sales engineering role, it's going to be really hard for you to start with the startups. Startups, want somebody that's been there, done that, can ramp up quickly and, move quickly. And not saying that you can't do those things, but they're probably going to go with a safer choice versus somebody that's never done that before.
Mhm.
For their team. That's just like the world of startups. So yeah, totally agree. Start with something that a bigger, more established company that is willing to train and onboard the right way. And you get those big foundational responsibilities and tasks really honed into you before you can say, okay, now I'm ready to move into startups. I know how this works.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's not really known. So I always make sure to at least mention it because it is what it is nowadays. That's the employers have the market right now and they have
Mhm.
the choice to be picky.
So
Have
when
you
you're
kind of found the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I don't hire. I'm mostly looking for senior SEs.
Right.
There are times when I would be hiring associate or just an SE role, and those you can kind of expect to train up, and they're a
Yeah.
cheaper resource, and they have less experience coming in. Senior SE roles, typically you have experience right in being an SE for a number of years. But I'm curious, when you place SEs at companies, because I know that you do this kind of a lot,
Mhm.
are you seeing the same thing? Like, are you able to place someone that doesn't have SE experience into an organization, and like how often does that happen?
Yeah, very good question. It doesn't happen that often unless it's a very specific role. Like, for example, a role we worked a while ago was they needed the SE to have DevOps experience and really, technical. So they were okay with that person not having a ton of customer facing. They still needed to have some customer facing, whether it was in the past as, a different job or whatever that looked like, but because of the technicality of it, they were more willing to not have customer facing as long as they could communicate good, right? Like you jump on a call and they can hold a good conversation, or they're what they call a natural in conversations or a little bit of an extrovert. So
Yeah,
there's been some times like that, but I agree for the most part they're looking for at least 2 years, 1 year if it's like a direct competitor of some sort. But at least 2 years is typically where we start with placing them as well.
yeah, interesting. That's
Yeah.
that's exactly what I would say is, I experienced a similar thing, and as a hiring manager,
Mhm.
yeah, the exceptions for non-customer facing roles would have to be
Very
special.
few.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very few. Love that. Okay, cool. I love to ask you, so, right now, you're in a little bit of a player coach position. What would you say are some pros and cons to that, while being a leader?
Yeah, right now I'm a player coach. I haven't always been, even at this position.
Mhm.
There are certainly some pros and cons. One of the pros is I'm rarely surprised by what my SEs say, which is feels good as a manager,
Yeah,
because I've been there and I'm experienced the same thing, whether that's a product or customers or changes in the market or technologies that our customers are talking about. I'm rarely caught off guard. Uh, and also, as a player coach, I can proactively change things that are broken. Like if something doesn't work for me, I can just go fix it for me and my team, which is really nice.
yeah,
And then I can show up to cross-functional meetings with a place of knowing, firsthand experience, and can say things like, "I was on a call the other day with a customer, 1,000 seats, whatever it may be," and it just holds a little bit more weight. Without that experience, often there's pushback of what customer, how big were they? Can you show me the call recordings? What other data points? And it's just kind of this endless. Your your words doesn't hold as much weight if you're not in front of customers. But there are cons too. Some weeks large customers will take up most of my week, and my
yeah,
strategic things get put on the wayside, and that can be frustrating to myself and also the people that are depending on me to deliver. And I'm proactive about what's going to get
yeah.
stalled, why. But in a perfect world, I'd have someone, a duplicate of me, doing that, or
Yeah,
handed the project off earlier. But sometimes you're
yeah,
just tapped for things and you run with them. And then also cross-functional relationships sometimes can take a hit. I spend less time with the other leaders at the company because I'm more customer facing. So It won't always be a player coach. It really depends on what the business needs at that
For
time.
sure.
But I certainly recommend doing it if you've never done it, or at least being on calls and joining calls regularly as a leader.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I mean, no matter what you do, there's always going to be pros and cons, right? To being just a full-on leader versus, player coach, etc. So that makes sense. And I can see how it can be, frustrating. Like there is going to be times where you're just on calls and then the rest of the stuff's going to fall off and then vice versa. So yeah, that makes sense. In your opinion, which I think you kind of said it already, but to clarify, do you think that a leader should always carry quotas or accounts, or is it something that you're like, yeah, you should try it because you need to know still how it feels, or like what's your overall thought process on that?
I don't think it's a one size fits all. It's really
Yeah,
interesting. I've listened to your podcast, and leaders are kind of split between this. And I also feel like the leaders that don't think they need to be on calls, one, they might have a very good reason, or two,
yeah,
a very bad reason, and you never know which leader you're getting. uh, so
yeah,
I can say what works for me. For other leaders, I don't know their situation, and
that
what
is
the
true.
business is calling them to do.
Yeah, I will say, Scott, that is a very political answer. Good job on that one. I wanted to shift a little bit of the focus. So you manage a team in the US as well as a small European team. Do you notice a difference, one, between cultures, and two, do you manage them differently by chance, or is it like one size fits all, basically? What applies here applies there. Like, what does that look like?
Um, it's mostly awareness about how much face time my remote team is getting from me, which
Yeah,
is a lot less. So I have very few opportunities to kind of push our culture of excellence, of accountability, of empathy in front of the customer, things like that. Um, and also, uh, I need to depend on them more to be independent. So I'm looking for more senior people when they're remote,
yeah,
because I really need to make sure that I cannot talk to them for a week and nothing's going to explode.
fine. Yeah,
It just shows up in hiring decisions and FaceTime. And thankfully, my team at Dashlane is exactly that. They are dependable, reliable, and I don't have to worry about them if for some reason we aren't able to meet for a week.
yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I know, at least from our previous conversation, you are currently hiring. I'd love to, if you want to share a little bit about one, what's happening at Dashlane right now. Why is it a good time to join you guys? And then we can dive into a little bit of like what you're looking for and things like that at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Dashlane's at a very exciting place right now. For those listening who might not know what Dashlane is, we're a credential manager. We have competitors in the space like 1Password, Bitwarden. For a time, LastPass was a big competitor. They're not really so much anymore.
Mhm.
Those of you who know, you know. Um, so it's a really exciting time to join Dashlane because we're solving problems in a really unique way. Where most password managers are going wide with their technology stacks, Dashlane is going deep. Where most password managers are focusing on secrets management, privileged access management, license management, AI stuff that's just kind of out there. The problem of credential management hasn't been solved yet. 80% of corporate breaches are still caused by weak, reused, compromised passwords. And password management industry has been around for 15 years. That number really hasn't changed. So the industry as a whole has failed. And Dashlane and other password managers, of course, we do protect our customers in so many ways, but there's more that can be done. And ultimately, we want every user to be 100% secure. And I think we're still heading down that path where other password managers are basically saying, here's a place to put your passwords, and the rest is up to you. Dashlane is, here's a place to put your passwords, and now what you do with those passwords is actually really important. You need to get them all updated, all secured. And I think Dashlane uniquely helps customers in that way, and we're not selling to you that just moving your passwords from a notebook that doesn't have a lock on it to a notebook that does
Yeah.
have a lock on it changes anything. Those passwords are out on the internet, and your local copy of them, where they are, doesn't matter so much. So, yeah, it's one of the most exciting times to be in the space and at Dashlane. And you had a second part to your question. I don't remember what it was though.
Yeah, I was going to dive into it. Before I go into that, though, actually, you mentioned something interesting that I wanted to touch on really quickly. You mentioned AI, which we all know has been the biggest buzzword of our time for the most part.
Mhm.
How are you guys tackling that internally? Is it just we're using it in our internal team? Are we adding things to products? Like what? How are you guys deciding what to do versus what not to do?
Great question. Dashlane is probably unique with SaaS businesses because we are holding customers' most prized information, their
Yeah,
passwords. We have a zero knowledge architecture, like we can't even see our users' data. Most of the big players in the space have that. So we are going slowly and methodology through AI because we don't want to introduce any risk that's unnecessary.
yeah,
So of course, there's like simple tools like RFP automation that I would say most SE teams are using technology to uh, submit their RFPs and like write answers that they've written 100 times before, right? We ought to do that.
yeah,
And we have secure versions of AI platforms that, doesn't share any of the data, but also we don't have access to our customers' data as well. So there's like even a extra layer of safeguards on there. The most impactful thing that we've done recently is one of our demo pages. We have an AI anti-phishing software, and I built a demo page that like triggers our AI anti-phishing alert.
yeah,
Um, that's really all I can say about it. We are
yeah.
experimenting with it in a very careful way, and I can't say that it's genuinely impacted our business aside from our call recording software. It summarizes
Mhm.
all our calls, and
Yeah.
that's the best invention ever.
We can both agree there. And I love that you guys are being cautious about it. Of course, like you said, it's one of the company's most prized possessions, right? The passwords, the key to literally everything.
Mhm.
Because obviously AI has been so big, and we see some companies that have implemented it where one has maybe not been needed, two, the product has not been mature enough to introduce it, which
Mhm.
obviously has led to other risks. So I do love that just because it's AI and it's the biggest thing out there, that you're not just kind of slapping the AI word on everything, and calling it AI. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome to hear. There are still companies, that are taking their time to really introduce it the right way, if at all, if it's needed, right? So
Yeah. On the flip side, I noticed because I'm hiring from the candidate side, AI is getting used a lot,
yeah.
and it's very noticeable. Like when AI cover letters are sent, you
Oh
kind
yeah.
of you kind of just stop reading because it's like, well, you didn't write this, so why am I reading it? Um,
Yeah, speaking of the candidate side, I'd love to know in your eyes what makes an A player, versus like a good sales engineer.
Um, yeah, it kind of comes back to what they're doing in their free time. Like the baseline, they have to be great partners for their salespeople, customer success if they're working with them. Really, that valued, trusted advisor to their customers. And you can make a great career just doing those things. If you want to stand out, get promoted, get raises, it's really what are you doing in your free time? How are you spending that time? And also, how are you showing up in one on ones with managers, with your manager, with leadership? Are you coming with solutions, um,
Yeah.
opportunities, or are you just complaining about this and that? Um, there are both SEs, and I've seen negative SEs be successful because they can be impactful, but that's usually short-lived. It's hard for an organization, especially good organizations, to stomach negativity and especially
Hmm.
persistent negativity. So
Yeah.
be positive, look for opportunity, continue to show up, continue to do your best, and use your time wisely.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's anything worse than just one negative person that's always negative about everything, how it can bring down the culture and just the overall mood of like the entire team, except, besides himself. So that's very
Mhm.
true. What, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I obviously haven't seen it. You might have seen it too, but I do think right now we're in an employer's market to where, again, companies can be a little bit more picky on who they're hiring, which is great for the company overall. What do you see in even let's starting with resumes? What are some things that catches your eyes that you're like, okay, I am going to talk to this person? What are your requirements? When you're looking at something, and how can people stand out to you?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no tricks here, at least, for me. I have 2 open roles for senior SEs. I get people reaching out to me on LinkedIn, saying, "Hey, I submitted a resume." Great. I'm gonna see your resume. I'm gonna look it over, and I'm gonna evaluate kind of the same with the rest of the candidates that submitted.
Yeah,
Um, the the ones that stand out are the people that take an extra few minutes to tell me why they applied for the role and why they think it's relevant to them. That wasn't written by AI, which is
it's a little
very
hard.
obvious as a hiring manager. Like, you kind of think like, "Oh, I've edited it to make it sound human," but after reading 20 of them, they all
You
kind
can
of
kind of tell. Yeah,
with, like, keywords and things like that that span out. So
yeah,
a few sentences is all that's needed. I'm not asking you to write a full cover letter, but, "Hey, I applied. I heard you on the podcast. I think it's cool what Dashlane is doing. I've done XYZ in the
right.
past. Might be a good fit," right? Like, I'm excited for the role, and I think my experience matches up
Yeah,
in this way, really can help you stand apart. And yeah, that really makes a difference. And also, of course, your network. If you do know someone, I've had people reach out to me that have worked uh, at the same company 4 jobs ago that have said, "Hey, I'm interested." And
yeah,
if I know them by reputation, that typically will at least get them an interview. Um, Sometimes they get hired, sometimes they don't, but it
yeah.
gives you at least a, a foot in the door for the interview process.
For sure. I'll give you one big tip, which you'll probably have heard this one before, but if you are gonna take the time to write something with AI, at least remove the dash lane or the M dash.
DM
So
dash.
that way, yeah, that way you're at least trying, at least where it seems like you're trying. Yeah, it's interesting. I know people say like, "Oh, but I've been using it for years ago." Maybe can't really tell anymore. You gotta evolve with the times. Just remove the M dash, and move on. You
Unless
don't
you're
gotta
in
stand your
magazines,
ground.
nobody's writing with the M dash. Um,
Yeah, very
yeah,
true.
eh,
You
never
know
seen
what
one
now
since MBT came around.
yeah, I was gonna say now I've even been reading some of my old books recently, and I see the M dash from, like, 2001 or 2002, and it just it still triggers it a little bit. I'm like, "Wow, did they use AI back then?"
So, Ari, I'm curious about, when you're placing people in
Mhm.
roles, how do you see the candidates that you're working with, like, that you're placing in roles? One, how do you gauge whether or not they're gonna be a good fit? Maybe not from the resume of just like, "I think I can
Yeah.
place this person in front of my customer." And then 2, how do you feel separates them during that interview process to get them actually placed?
Two great questions. So for us, it's a little bit different in the sense that we are literally 90% headhunting versus like, through applications or people coming to us. Although
Mhm.
we still do, but for the most part is 90% of everything we place is through headhunting. So for us personally, the biggest thing is your LinkedIn profile. Is it updated to reflect what you do? Obviously, if I can't tell online that you do something and you have certain skill set, I probably won't reach out. Now, if it's like, let's just say I were to work with Dashlane and I see you guys have like your top 5 competitors and they work there, then yeah, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and reach out to them and see if they might be a good fit. So that's the first thing on like first glance. And then to the second part of your question of like what makes them stand out to me. So We always screen them on phone calls. The first thing is, one, do they have the minimum qualification that the company requires, whether that's the tech or the technicals tool stack that they need, right? Whether they need Python or whatever kind of technical skill set do they need? Do they check those main boxes? And then from there, it will depend on each leader's honestly requirement in the sense of like culture fit. So I've talked to leaders where they're like, hey, if they're not even smiling with you or cracking a joke when you're talking to them, it's just not the type of culture we have here. So, you can bring them over. Maybe I'll have a conversation with them. But if they're like an A player, but besides that, if they don't even crack a joke, just don't bring it my way type of thing. So we tweak that a little bit depending on the type of leader that we're working with and what they deem a culture fit for their environment. Other times, for example, could be leaders that are like, hey, I need overachievement on quota in their last 3 years. If they don't have that, it's just not the right position for them. So it's very specific, but we always start with like minimum requirements that they need to have for the role, whether it's from a direct competitor, technical skill set, things like that. And then the last part of it is going to be the culture aspect. What does the leader want us to bring in front of them? Or who, I should say, not what. But who does he want us to bring in front of them? We base it off of that.
Got it. So what makes someone easy to work with from your perspective?
You're asking me?
Yeah, like from a candidate perspective, who might be working with you?
What makes them easy? Honestly, the biggest thing is communication. So I will not disqualify somebody like if they reschedule with me on a screening call that we have set, but if they don't communicate that, or I just see them like move the calendar invite like 3 times without even sending me a quick email or a quick message, whatever our form of communication is, that to me is a red flag already. So I know that, bringing them in front of the leadership, I will have doubts unless they have a really good reason for doing that. So communication is like just honestly basic standards, but unfortunately, I feel like it's something that still needs to be mentioned because it's not, top of mind for everybody. So communication is number one. I guess from there, it can be very job specific, but yeah, I mean, I will say that communication is the biggest thing. And then depending on the job qualifications, how easy it is. I always ask for motivation. So if somebody takes my call and if they're like, yeah, I'm interested, let me hear more, I'll always ask for motivation. If it's not something that it's like, oh, but I just wanted to hear, I'll still talk to the team, but, I might not move. Then I also don't want to waste the leader's time on that type of person if they're not even remotely interested in moving. It's just more like, yeah, I just want to see what my options are. So those are, I would say, the two biggest things that are general, besides specific requirements.
It's interesting because from the hiring manager side, it's similar. Good communications. Customers who are following up with the recruiter after interviews and saying like, hey, had a great conversation, excited about next steps, like talked about these few things that got me excited more about the role, really just shows engagement. And, if you're in a competitive hiring situation, which SCs today mostly are, two people, everything being equal, someone who is really engaged in the process, following up, reinforcing that they're excited about the position and company, like you're probably going to choose them over someone who's same
Absolutely.
experience and just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, I mean, we have, because most of the people we place, they already have jobs. So I understand things are going to happen. You're like, hey, I had a customer call, like jump in last minute or whatever that looks like. But the biggest thing, again, just goes back to communication. And yeah, showing excitement for the company is definitely a big thing as well. It might sound kind of silly to say out loud, but it's true. I mean, you want to feel as a leader that you're bringing on somebody that's excited for that opportunity versus more somebody that has an ego towards it and they're just going through the motion and all that. You will, like you said, you'll be more prone to give an offer to somebody that has shown excitement and has been engaged, in somebody that's just like, yeah, I'm going through the process, and we'll see what
Really
happens.
true. Early in my career, I really didn't like that part about interviewing and stuff. I really thought like I can do this role. I don't need to love your technology to do it well, right? And that's how I felt about the early part of my career. And as a hiring manager, like, who are you going to pick? Someone who's like really
Yeah.
likes the technology and
You
wants
see
to
the
make a career out of
side.
it. Someone who just like wants a job.
Yeah.
And I, now sitting where I am and the more experience that I've gained over the last 15 years or so, like I get it.
Yeah, very true. And I will say, I mean, that might be a little bit cyclical too. Like if it's more of an employee market to where, there's a boom and companies just cannot keep enough talent, then yeah, you might be able to be a little bit more egoistic, and hold off and kind of do all that stuff. But I do think at this point it's just a different market. And I will say, honestly, what we're talking about is nothing that has like evolved. We're asking for the same things that we probably asked like 10, 15 years ago. Basic things like communication, show engagement. But it is kind of mind blowing to me still that uh, people will just not do those basic things. And, I know you need the job. You tell me you need the job and you really want it. But then at the end of the day, we still don't feel that engagement and that excitement. So it's a little bit interesting to me too, being in this line of work and still seeing that we're just talking about basic things, but it's still
Yeah.
needed.
And as a hiring team, as a hiring manager, you spend so little time with someone before making a hiring decision, and like
Right.
you don't have a lot of data to go on, and things like that. You extrapolate of like, what is this candidate going to be in if they want this job and aren't
Yeah,
willing to do what it takes to get them this job? What are they going to do in role when like they don't really have a lot of motivation to go above and beyond? In
exactly.
my experience, the things that I suss out during interviews, I are true. Like
Yeah,
no candidate is perfect, but I'm always going in with open eyes and saying, all right, this person has these things that I believe about them that I found during the interview based on the answers to their questions, and we'll probably have to coach them on it. And
yeah.
more often than not, those are correct. And but one thing that is difficult to coach around is motivation for being successful at your job.
Yeah. That's definitely a hard one. What does your guys' interview process look like for anybody that's interested? What
Yeah,
what does
I'm
that
glad
look
you
like?
asked. Dashlane.com/careers has our job posting. There's two SE positions out there today. One is for the DACH region, so probably not this audience, but Germany. And then we have one open for the US based in New York. We're hybrid. We also have a Boston office as well. So if
Nice.
you're in any of those locations, um, yeah, definitely submit an application. If you really want, I'm not going to tell you to not hit me up on LinkedIn, but I will probably just go to my internal careers portal and find your application. We do review every application with humans, so we're not eliminating anything without looking at them.
Oh, love that. I know that AI in application is a big thing nowadays, but same as you, I do believe that anything I mean, AI, I don't feel like AI is there yet in terms of hiring, especially startups. They shouldn't be using AI screening. They don't have the name, the brand. If you're like Google or Uber or that, then yeah, you can get away with using AI and screenings and all that stuff. But smaller startups, it's not that it's them. I think that the market is just not there yet to fully accept the AI process.
Yeah, it's hard to know on both sides. If either side is using AI, like you don't get to know each other, and that's really, really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, very true. I know you said dashlane.com/careers, and then if they wanted to reach out to you directly, would LinkedIn be the best place for that?
Yeah, connect with me, send me a message. Happy to have discussions for anyone who's listening, just about SE career stuff as well, even if you're not really out there looking.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're on LinkedIn, Scott is tagged, so it'll be easier for you to find him. If you're listening to this on the podcast, I will put his LinkedIn profile on the show notes as well as the dashlane.com/careers to make it easier for you guys to grab them without having to go hunting for it. And Scott, I'd love to ask one last question. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave the audience here with today, whether it's on hiring or just a tip that's really served you or an advice that's really served you in your career?
Well, I guess I'm curious for those maybe looking for an SC position or breaking in or looking for other companies. Do you would you recommend reaching out to recruiters is like yourself? Is that something that you do and have done where they can reach out to SE recruiters and help get sourced, or direct applying, or maybe both?
Absolutely both. Each recruiter. So I think the biggest misconception about recruiters is that we're career services, which there are some recruiters that offer that to where they will help you, do your LinkedIn profile or do your resume or help you find a job, which I call reverse recruiting in a way. But most recruiters like myself, we work directly with the company and they typically tell us the requirements that they're looking for, so we go and hunt based on those requirements. So if you're in SC, yes, absolutely would love to connect with you because we get roles our way honestly very, very often. So it really depends. So if I don't have something for you right now, I might have it for you in a week or 2 weeks, whatever that looks like. But even when I jump on calls with talent, I always tell them we're not career services, so that's the biggest thing. But we'll still love to connect, and as we have things, even if it's not now, I've actually I'm working with somebody right now that we're in an interview process that I connected with them last year, didn't have anything for them at that time, but we stayed in touch and the opportunity came, and he seemed like a really great candidate for the role that I was working in. And I introduced them, and obviously they're going through our interview process. So, yeah, we are dependent by the companies, but I would still love to connect.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. It was great having you here. And thank you for sharing all of your knowledge, being super transparent. Again, for those of you joining or listening to us, I will have Scott LinkedIn obviously on LinkedIn tag, but as well as in our footnotes for our podcast. For those of you watching live, thank you again for joining us. And then if you're watching the recording of this, thank you for being a listener. Feel free to leave us comments and reviews. We always read them and I always respond to afterwards as well. And if there's anything for Scott directly, I'll just make sure to tag him so he can get back to you guys. But thank you again, Scott. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you so much, Arby. Bye.
Bye.